realizing, okay, there's a mandate of leadership over my life. And so one of the things I've been a student of and continue to be a student of is leadership. And I try to understand what leadership is, why it is, what it is, and all that stuff. So I kept trying to figure that out because I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I felt like it was a call on my life and I was going to press into that. And so what you have to do is you just have to take these words and press into it. And that path might adjust, that course might adjust itself a couple of times, but you know the direction that you're heading in. And I just feel like that God has a lot to say to you, and I just feel like there's an encouragement that you need to possess, and there's a determination that you need to fix in your heart that this needs to happen. And you just put it out there, and you just do it. And I feel like that your gift set is probably, there's a greater level of inspiration, or your gift set is in something that you're going to bring forth at another time, and you're going to inspire other people, and you're going to create other people to create works. And I almost feel like I feel like it's like a beatnik, like I keep feeling like beatnik, like Jock Karak or whatever that guy's name is. I can't remember.
Oh, Jack Kerouac.
Yeah, there you go. Like I feel like it's like something like because they were really like out of the loop of the norm. You know, they're writing, everything that came out of that was like completely out of the loop of the norm. Which if you really want to get technical, the beatniks gave birth to the hippies, and the hippies actually gave birth to like a movement, particularly within the church, that's been a complete level of freedom. That freedom actually carried over in the church. That's a whole other story. But I feel like it's almost like a coffee house kind of beatnik feel that I feel like with you, and you like got like these glasses on, like, you know, like cool, like Ray-Ban-ish kind of glasses, not like granny glasses.
Of course.
Little granny, like octagonals, no. But I feel like you got like these like cool glasses on, and you got like this like sweater on, and it's kind of like a coffee house feel. And
she's always in a coffee house.
Really?
Yeah, I am always working in a coffee house.
Wow, there you go. And I feel like it's got like this coffee house vibe, and you're like teaching the people, and like I see you like walking around, like read your story, and people, I see like the people reading their stories out loud, and you're saying that's good, this is what, and the class is giving feedback, and you're really trying to push them to like sort of, you know, pull the I keep wanting to hear this say this word, extrapolate, for some reason, that you're getting them to try to pull the emotion out even further, or try to pull the expression out even further. And so I feel like that's something that will come to you, and I feel like builds your credibility. And I just really believe if you'll take these things and you'll pray about them, God's going to give you wisdom. And He may only give you one thing, but He may give you other directions. And I feel like He's going to put influential people that you're going to cross paths with people, and people are going to cross your path intentionally. And what these are called prophetic impulses. So like, okay, you're saying, like somebody's like, oh, I'm believing God for a new job, right? No, I'm just praying and believing God for a new job. And then somebody, you hear them in the line at Publix and or whatever, the grocery store, and they're like, man, I just can't find any good help. I'm really looking to hire. You know, that's a prophetic impulse. You should act on that. But what we do is like, oh, you're looking for somebody to hire? Oh, that's cool. Well, you know, that's great. You know, you just even overhearing it in a conversation, right? Those are prophetic impulses, because we pray and the Lord begins to set the stage, and He begins to create the environment, because He gives to us the desires of our heart. And as we pray, we worship Him. He sires, gives birth to something in us, and then we pray according to what He's birthed within us, and then He begins to set the table for us. This is kind of how it works. And so, like, all this stuff starts to happen, you know? We're doing a charter school. Okay, we want to do a charter school. We have this whole thing. We're going to do. I feel like the Lord tells us do a school. I'm like, do a school? Are you crazy? You know, it's like, you know, small church trying to get to school. I feel like He tells us to do a school. So we start putting together a charter school, because that's the only thing I know to do. It's like, we'll do a charter school. So it's what I knew. So we start organizing. Oh man, charter school is going to take 3 years. Well, God tells us to do a school. So this is our path. We're going to start doing this and see where it goes. We start pushing into that. I'm at a conference. Guy says, oh, Sherry, my wife comes up to me and goes, Tony got a charter school up in 6 months. I'm like, no way Tony got a charter school up in 6 months, because it just doesn't happen. And so I go over to my friend Pastor Tony, and I said, Tony, you got a charter school up in 6 months? He's like, I didn't get a charter school up in 6 months. He's like, I got a Title I school up in 6 months. And then he starts telling me all about the Title I school. Prophetic impulse. And then so I hear a story. I'm trying to follow a path, and into my lane comes another person in course corrects and shows me something what I thought was the path, and I could have said, no, bless God, we're doing a charter school. But I never heard the Lord say charter school. I heard Him say do school, and I'm like, well, you're doing school.
And that's the winding path.
That's right. And so this guy comes in, and he's like, whatever you wanted, whatever you guys need. And so now we're moving into that lane, but it's a prophetic impulse. And if and again, the tendency is no, we get locked into it, but we have to recognize the.
So I'm just thinking now about what you said earlier about the winding path, and I spoke to my mom about that too. That sometimes we get so locked into our expectation about how we think it will manifest and unfold, and we get disheartened and discouraged when things don't happen the way that we think that they're going to happen, and then we think that it's not going to happen when maybe there's something else percolating, like right alongside it or on the periphery, and it's right about to manifest, or maybe it even is in the same moment. Maybe it even is, but we're just not seeing it. And so sometimes, like when you think, you see it unfolding a certain way, but then you reach a point where there's a disappointment and it doesn't unfold that way.
So looking into a charter school, we start looking at all the requirements, and we're like, okay, it takes 15 months to get the paperwork approved. Okay, so we need to get the paperwork in, so it's going to take us 4 months to get the paperwork form to get it in. It's going to take 15 months to get it approval, and if we fall outside of the boundaries of the school year, we're going to have to wait the entire rest of the year. So we averaged out the time, and it was going to average out about 3 years. So that was a little discouraging, and I was like, all right, we're going to do it anyway. And we just kept pressing in and pressing in and pressing in, and like, okay. And now this charter school thing comes, or this Title I thing comes along, and it's just completely opening up. I mean, it's just totally opening up. And it's it's easier, and so I'm 99.9% sure we're going to launch a Title I school next a year from now.
Awesome.
And so next August we'll be launching a Title I. I mean, we still got some hurdles we got to clear, but the point was, it's just those kind of prophetic impulses. People go, oh, I'm believing God. I've had people here, and they're like, oh, I feel like I have a ministry calling on my life, Pastor. I really feel like Jesus has called me to, pastor, preach, teach, whatever it is. And I'm like, great. Like, well, we got a process. I said, if you want to submit to a process, we have a process that you can go through, and and all this other stuff. And then they don't want to submit to a process. And I tell them, I'm like, you're never gonna get there. And so here you're believing God for something. You come to a church that's essentially an equipping church. And like there's a prophetic impulse to you that shows you a pathway that, albeit it might be 2 years, but you haven't gotten there in 10, you know what I'm saying? And we're going to take you into a position where you're going to be able to do certain things within a relatively short amount of time, and you blow it off because everybody should recognize, that again is where people just miss their prophetic impulses. They miss the very thing that they're asking God for something, but they're so locked in it, or they have such internal dysfunctions that they can't recognize it when it's right in front of them.
Wow.
And that's a problem. That's a problem. So, but yeah, I feel like it's good stuff.
Very good stuff.
Did you want to add something real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I might want to talk to you about the school.
Awesome.
People that I talk to, and they're working with churches to help them finance ministries.
That's awesome.
It might be something I thought of you.
That's one of the hurdles. We got to raise startup capital.
A couple of weekends ago, you talked about the vision of the school and all that stuff. This is exactly what they're doing.
Guy just gave me a word, Ezekiel 47. He talked about 2 rivers flowing, and the 2 rivers will purify the sea. It's a crazy word. And he goes, I feel like this word's for you. And immediately I saw 2 rivers, and I felt like the Lord was showing me the church and the school. And it said, and there'll be fruitfulness on both banks of the rivers, and I just felt like it's just this whole thing. And again, that's a, right, like that word. I mean, it's some crazy Isaiah or Ezekiel 47:9, I think it is, and it talks about that, and it's just again, it's like a,
You know what I think? I think that if any churches should have a community outreach ministry, probably the best thing to do is through a school system.
Here's the problem. That's right. You're right on it, Danny. Here's the problem.
I've always been for that.
The problem is here's the problem. The fundamental problem within the church is thinking. And the fundamental problem within the church is not just thinking. It's limited thinking by the leadership that transfers itself down into the lives of the people. Here's again leadership principle. The people are not the problem. The leadership is the problem. And that means, it's like, okay, at the end of the day, like, you get what you preach, and the people become what you lead them to become. It just doesn't happen. Like, Jesus just doesn't weave through the crowd. So if you teach them in shallow, superficial ways, you shouldn't be surprised that the people that are sitting in the church are shallow and superficial.
Yes.
You know, if you teach them in materialistic ways and self-indulgent ways, you shouldn't be surprised that the people that are now activating themselves the same way. So that being said, the fundamental problem, like, okay, you take Title I. Title I is a school that primarily deals with economically underserved students. So they can be smart, they can be whatever, but the grant that's given is given in relationship to their income levels for school choice. Most churches don't want to touch that. You've seen Christian schools? They're elitist schools for the wealthy. That's really essentially, so really the people, the kids on that level of the economic scale never see a Christian education. And most of the time Christian schools are $12,000, $14,000 a year. That's what it costs to put your kid in a Christian school. You know, whereas what Title I is you can do a full-on Christian private school, and through Florida School Choice, they can come to your school and the state will pay you to take them into your school.
That's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
And guess what? We have about 15, 20 kids here in this church right now that their moms are all tired. I go up to them, I go, your kid's Title I? And she's got 3 kids, this gal. She's like, yeah. And I go, I'm not telling you, I'm not asking that to shame you. That's how, you know, because she's getting really emotional. She's like, yeah, my kids are Title I. I told her, I said, that's great. And I said, here's why that's great. I go, we're doing a Christian school, and your kids can come to the school because they already have the scholarship.
That's awesome.
Right? And so I'll tell you another thing. This is a prophetic word, right? I'm asking the Lord, why? So here's a prophetic impulse. I'm asking God for the letter of Cyrus. So, okay, Ezra goes to rebuild the temple. Right? God, Ezra the king, Cyrus sends him back to rebuild the Jewish temple of his God. Cyrus says, oh, by the way, as you're going to rebuild the temple of your God, we, the state, will pay for the rebuilding of the temple of your God. So he gave him a letter. Basically, whatever Cyrus needed, if he needed lumber, he went to the lumber yard or wherever, the tree company, and said, hey, bring us some wood, bring us some bricks or whatever. And that letter stated that Cyrus the king would pay for it. So Ezra didn't have to pay for a thing. I've been asking God for about 10 years. I want the letter of Cyrus. I want the letter of Cyrus. I want the letter of Cyrus. I've been asking for that. So lo and behold, here comes the Title I school, and the state is going to give us money to give a Christian education. And I'm like, and I can hear the Spirit going, letter of Cyrus, letter of Cyrus. But I could be a snoot and go, oh, I don't want a school that you know, I don't want a school for economically challenged kids. That's what churches do. I'm serious. I mean,
but when they do that, they
we're
get
not going
less.
to come out and say that, but that's what they do. You know.
But that's a meager existence, because then you receive less and less of that prophetic light.
That's right.
And
that's right. And the kids that really need it, the transformative people, I feel like God's given me a whole vision. And as I've kind of stepped into this, He's unfolded this whole vision. Like, what we operate on a budget level, okay, 100 students will double the budget. Okay, so just give you numbers. All right, so this church operates on about $280,000 a year, and that's everything, and that's minimal, right? And if you realize where we are and what we have to pay and everything to keep a church operational, that's like next to nothing. Oh my gosh, churches are operating millions of dollars, millions, right? I got a friend of mine, he takes in $40,000 in a week. Yeah, we don't even come close to that. So nonetheless, we are what we are. God has provided, God has sustained. I'm not poor mouthing the Lord at all, but our operating budget is nothing. Okay, state's going to give us $5,800 per student to run a school.
Wow.
So if we run 100 students, we have $580,000 gross revenue. That's double what, because I felt like the Lord, I was fasting and praying in January, and the Lord said, do a school. That's when we started this whole thing. I'm like, okay. And I heard the Lord say, let the school lead the church. And all right. And so then I start looking at the numbers, because it doesn't matter if you want to do it. If the numbers don't work, you may as well forget it, because you're
I've been seeing a huge revival come to this church.
It's going to happen.
And I've been praying for it, because God's been saying, I want you to really pray over this church for the revival. A great revival is coming through this church in Miami.
We're going to teach these kids. We're going to have a Christian education, but we have a whole after school program. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're doing off of that, a bunch of variations. But one of the things that we want to do is we want to do a supernatural ministry school to the students. And so we want to teach these kids, You know, I have a vision of like I see like 5-year-olds praying for people in the hallways and stuff like that. And then like I have a vision of doing a school, but also we're going to teach. We want to teach them more than anything. We want to teach them a mindset, and more than anything, like there's something else we want to thread into this is business principles. And I kind of see, I haven't fully formed it yet, but I see like a business school where the kids can, even if they graduate, we have like a business center that teaches economics and teaches these kids about business. And I felt like the Lord showed me in 5 years you will produce change, and you're going to see neighborhoods change if we'll facilitate. Oh my gosh!
I think that one of the main things that schools need to get on is teaching kids about finances,
absolutely,
economics. People get out there, you graduate from college, you have no idea what you're doing.
No idea.
Financially in the world.
I want to teach them how to go in and make a difference in their neighborhoods. I want to teach them microfinance. I want them to understand all of this stuff and conceptually.
Of just being financially sound.
I have this plan.
People say, you know, money, this, you know, like, yeah, the love of money, good or evil, but the world runs on money.
That's right.
Like it or not.
It's our Father's business.
Money. It's our Father, yeah.
It's people say Christianity isn't a business. I'm like, it's our Father's business. According to that, is a business. Not in the all about profit and loss, but it's about gaining.
Yeah.
You know,
discipline. Knowing how to handle your life financially.
I want to do an art school.
That's awesome.
Right. I want the school to have an art. I want to have an art component to it. Right. So we're gonna get Faith to come down and do like her writer's workshop. So it's prophetic future.
I believe that because I mean she's in California right now, but God showed me she was going to go everywhere. I don't know what, but you said so many.
Faith's Coffee House Writer's Workshop. That's right.
But I mean, she couldn't have gone further from me unless she went to another country. She's in California.
I haven't started yet. I know I'm going to be traveling around the world. I know it.
And he told me that 2.5 months. She said, "I'm going to take her around the world. Let her go. Don't get in her way." He just kept saying that.
Faith, things start happening like that. She says it's just a matter of.
It's around the corner.
Writing is the same way. It's just what he was saying. Or anything. Once you start taking steps of faith, and you kind of activate something, that things start happening.
Yeah.
The same thing happens when you don't do it.
That's right.
And you start walking away from it.
That's right. That's right.
It's like, I don't know, I think of something drying up. It's not meant to dry up, but it's like you stop watering it. You start walking. I've been there. I've been through that. And, you know, if you allow God to bring you back, He will. He'll draw you through it back. But I think that one of the things that we definitely have to do is just start walking towards that. Like Pastor was saying. Once you start doing that, it's just... I read a book called Link.
Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, I read a couple of books. I think it's Link or the other one. Psychology and a lot of studies that he's done. But he says he talks about The Outliers. That's the one I'm thinking about.
The Outliers. Yeah.
And when I read that, it was like God speaking to me through that book because I said this makes so much sense. When I reached the highest level of my ministry, my music, and my life was when I was doing it the most. And he talks about the 10,000 hours that all the people that reached the highest level, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, whoever they were, and you compare it to preaching, teaching, you know, it has to do with the development and your mindset and your spirit and everything because of practice. And I think what you were speaking today, the more you do it, the more you get into that grace. That was amazing, by the way. The explanation about grace, I never heard it like that, and I said, this was so powerful.
I know. I took the notes.
A lot of times we stand there and, you know, grace, you know, the grace is enough, but it opened up a whole.
Oh yeah.
And I actually heard the word before that you said the root. Anyways, so as you keep going into it, you start by taking baby steps. You start just developing that gift.
Do you have this vision? We're going to do an art school,
It just starts growing and growing.
It's going to grow. What?
And you might see something right now that you might say, oh, it's going to happen next year. Maybe it takes 10
Mom
years.
loves you, Faith.
I know. She's like, she thinks
fan.
she's my agent. She's like,
the whole house is filled with people. I mean, they gravitate to her. People, I mean, she doesn't like when I do that, but she has this natural gift. People want to hear you. They want to hear her. She's got it.
But then you should be her.
They do. too. I'm sorry, babe.
So I was thinking about this school, right? And I was thinking about like this is really like my passion right now. I can barely contain myself on this, but I felt like the Lord was showing me like how to train these kids in art, like in a way that they can like identify with. Because I'm trying to see like, you know, the type of group of kids, and I'm already seeing what it is, and it's like, okay, so we're gonna come in and teach them Van Gogh, and I felt like the Lord was like, no. I felt like He was showing me like folk art and you know, like a completely different expression of art form, in you know, because I don't know, there's just something about the way He was showing me what to do, and I just felt like the Lord was showing me like this is a transformation of culture, and not to quote Hitler. But Hitler said, you know, you give me the schools, I'll take the country. And, you know, that's really a thing. And I feel like, I mean, an anonymous person said this, but...
Well, that's why I said what I said, because I think that if you read history, and if you learn anything from history, you realize that all the major changes in any society, country, world, whatever, political, social, whatever it has to do with, it starts on education.
Yeah.
You start forming the mind of people. They become that next generation.
What we lack even in our Christian
right.
schools,
They become that.
we don't take it seriously enough. And I feel like some, and even like I felt like the Lord has been showing me things. And like here at this church, we have a teacher who's been teaching in the school for 27 years in the school district. And she told me like Hank, one of the guys, the elders, he had them do a bucket list of 100 things they wanted to believe God for this year. You know, he had the whole church do it, which I didn't do it. Anyway, I'm under grace. No, I'm just kidding. But I wasn't in the room. He did a class, and I missed the class. But she told me that one of the top 3 things